The stars looked different from the bridge of the eternal harmony. Commander Lee Tae-ho had been saying that to himself for 3 years now, ever since he got his posting on the massive Confederate flagship. Back on Earth, stars were tiny points of light that seemed peaceful and far away. Out here, they were destinations. Places where people lived and worked and built cities on worlds humans had never dreamed of seeing. Tae-ho walked through the corridors of the ship, nodding to the various alien crew members as he passed. The Zephyrians with their blue skin and forearms always gave him respectful salutes. The rock-like granite folk simply nodded their heavy heads. Everyone seemed to get along well enough. That was what the Galactic Confederation was supposed to be about, different species working together for peace and progress. At least that's what they told him during training. He found engineer Kim Hyun-woo exactly where he expected, deep in the maintenance tunnels beneath Deck 7, covered in grease and muttering to himself. Hyun-woo had been working on the ship's systems for 2 years, and he knew every pipe, wire, and circuit better than anyone else on board. "What's got you so frustrated today?" Tae-ho asked, crouching down next to his friend. Hyun-woo looked up, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. Something weird in the quantum communication array. "There's extra hardware down here that's not on any of the ship blueprints." Tae-ho frowned. As a commander, he had access to most of the ship's technical documents. If something wasn't on the blueprints, it was either very new or very secret. "Show me." Hyun-woo led him through a narrow passage to a section of the ship that felt older than the rest. The walls here had a different texture, and the lighting was dimmer. Hidden behind a panel that looked like part of the wall was a complex array of crystalline structures and metal components that hummed with energy. "This thing is transmitting constantly," Hyun-woo said, pointing to readings on his scanner. "But it's not part of the normal communication system. It's using quantum frequencies I've never seen before." Tae-ho studied the device. It was beautiful in a strange way, with crystal formations that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. "Have you told anyone else about this?" "Not yet. I wanted to understand what it was first. But Tae-ho, this thing is old. Really old. The technology here is way more advanced than anything else on the ship." That evening, Tae-ho invited Dr. Park So-jin to join him and Hyun-woo for dinner in his quarters. So-jin was the ship's chief xenolinguist, responsible for translation protocols between the dozens of species that made up the Confederation. She was also one of the smartest people Tae-ho had ever met. "I need you to look at something," Tae-ho said after they had finished eating. "But I need you to keep it quiet for now." So-jin raised an eyebrow. "That sounds ominous." Hyun-woo pulled out his scanner and showed her the readings from the hidden device. "Can you make sense of these transmission patterns?" So-jin studied the data for several minutes, her expression growing more puzzled by the moment. "This is fascinating. The language structure is incredibly complex, but it's not any of the current Confederation dialects. It's much older." "How much older?" Tae-ho asked. "This looks like Old Galactic. I've only seen fragments of it in archaeological texts. It predates the current Confederation by thousands of years." The three friends looked at each other in silence. Finally, Hyun-woo spoke up. "So we have ancient technology hidden in our ship, transmitting in a dead language. That's not suspicious at all." Over the next week, they worked together to understand what they had found. Hyun-woo mapped the device's connections and discovered it was linked to the ship's main systems in ways that shouldn't have been possible. So-jin worked on translating the transmissions, using every linguistic database she could access without raising suspicion. Tae-ho used his command access to search for any official records of the device. He found nothing. According to every official document, the hidden array simply didn't exist. So-jin made the first breakthrough. "I've got partial translations of some of the transmissions," she told them during one of their secret meetings. "They're reports. Detailed behavioral analyses of the crew." "What kind of behavioral analyses?" Tae-ho asked. So-jin pulled up her notes. Psychological profiles, reaction times under stress, decision-making patterns, social interactions. But here's the strange part. The reports focus almost entirely on the human crew members. Hyun-woo leaned forward. "What about the other species?" "They're mentioned, but only in relation to how they interact with humans. It's like whoever is receiving these reports is only interested in studying us." That night, Tae-ho couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the implications of what they had discovered. Someone was watching the human crew, studying them, reporting on their every action. But who and why? The answer came 3 days later when So-jin burst into Tae-ho's quarters. her face pale with excitement and fear. "I've translated more of the transmissions," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Teho, we're not members of the Confederation. We're test subjects." She showed him her translation of the most recent transmission. The language was formal and clinical, like a scientific report. It described human adaptability rates, stress responses, and something called innovation indices. At the bottom was a section that made Taiho's blood run cold. Subject species demonstrates concerning levels of unpredictability and technological advancement. Recommendation: maintain surveillance protocols until final assessment phase. Final assessment phase? Taiho asked. Sojin nodded grimly. There are references to it throughout the transmissions. Apparently, every species that joins the Confederation goes through this assessment period. Those who pass continue as members. Those who fail, what happens to those who fail? The transmissions don't say directly, but there are references to population corrections and necessary eliminations for galactic stability. Hyun-woo, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke up. So they're deciding whether or not to kill us all. The three of them sat in silence, absorbing the weight of what they had discovered. Everything they had believed about humanity's place in the galaxy was a lie. Earth wasn't a proud member of an interstellar community. It was a specimen in a laboratory, being observed and judged by beings who saw them as potential threats to be eliminated. "We need to find out more," Taiho said finally. "If this is true, if humans across the galaxy are being watched and judged, we need to know what the criteria are. We need to know how much time we have." Over the following days, they expanded their investigation. Hyun-woo discovered that similar hidden devices existed throughout the ship, creating a network of surveillance that monitored everything the human crew did. Sojin found references in the transmissions to other human settlements and ships, all being watched by the same system. Taiho used his command access to research the history of species that had joined the Confederation. What he found disturbed him. Several promising civilizations had joined the Confederation with great fanfare, only to disappear from the records a few years later. The official explanations varied: civil wars, natural disasters, technological accidents. But the pattern was suspicious. The breakthrough came when Sojin managed to translate a transmission header that had been puzzling her for days. It contained a timestamp and a destination code, but also something else. A classification number that matched patterns she had seen in archaeological databases. "It's a species evaluation code," she explained to the others. "Every species that has ever been considered for Confederation membership gets assigned one." I cross-referenced it with historical records. She pulled up a chart on her tablet. "Look at this pattern. Species that receive codes ending in certain numbers consistently disappear from the records within 5 years of first contact." Taiho studied the chart. "What's humanity's code?" Sojin highlighted a number at the bottom of the list. "We're classified as species 847X. The X designation appears to be temporary, waiting for final classification." "And what determines the final classification?" Hyun-woo asked. "I'm not sure yet, but I found something else." Sojin pulled up another transmission, this one more recent than the others. "This came through yesterday. It's a status update on humanity's evaluation." Taiho read the translation, his heart sinking with each line. The report detailed humanity's rapid technological advancement, their adaptability to different environments, and their tendency to find innovative solutions to problems. All of these were listed as concerning developments, but it was the final line that made his hands shake. "Subject species evaluation entering final phase. Termination authorization pending council review. Estimated timeline 72 standard cycles." The three friends looked at each other in horror. 72 days. That was how long humanity had left before the Galactic Confederation decided whether they lived or died. "We have to warn Earth," Taiho said. "We have to warn everyone." "How?" Hyun-woo asked. "We're one ship in the middle of nowhere. Even if we tried to send a message, it would go through Confederation communication networks. They'd intercept it immediately." Sojin was already working on her tablet, pulling up star charts and communication protocols. "There might be a way. If we can access one of the long-range quantum transmitters during..." Taiho stood in the communication bay at 300 hours, when most of the ship's crew was asleep. He had volunteered for the night shift rotation, claiming he needed to catch up on administrative work. In reality, He was preparing to make the most dangerous communication of his life. Using his command codes, he accessed the deep space relay network that connected human military personnel across the galaxy. The system was designed for emergencies with encryption protocols that even the Confederation supposedly couldn't break. He hoped that was still true. His first message went to Captain Cho Minho on the mining colony at Kepler 442b. Minho had been his roommate during officer training, and they had stayed in touch over the years. If anyone would listen to an impossible story about galactic conspiracies, it would be him. The message was carefully coded to look like a routine status update, but hidden within the standard military jargon was a simple request. "Have you noticed anything unusual about your equipment lately?" The reply came back 6 hours later. "Funny you should ask. My engineers have been complaining about ghost signals in our communication array." "Why?" Tejo felt a mix of relief and dread. Relief that he wasn't alone in this discovery, and dread that the surveillance network was even bigger than they had imagined. His second message went to intelligence analyst Yoon Da-yoon at Confederate Central Command. Da-yoon had always been suspicious of everything, which made her excellent at intelligence work. If there were secrets to be found at the highest levels of the Confederation, she would know about them. Her response was more cautious. "Interesting question. Perhaps we should discuss this during my next leave rotation." That afternoon, Sojin made a breakthrough that changed everything. She had been working on translating older transmissions from the hidden device, going back months into the archived data. What she found was a complete record of humanity's evaluation process. "Look at this," she said, showing Tejo and Hyunwoo her translation. "This is from when humans first made contact with the Confederation 30 years ago." The document was labeled Species 847 Initial Assessment Protocol. It described humanity in clinical terms, like animals in a zoo. Their physical capabilities, technological level, social structures, and psychological profiles were all cataloged and analyzed. "They've been planning this from the beginning," Hyunwoo said, reading over her shoulder. "First contact wasn't about welcoming us to the galaxy. It was about starting our evaluation." So Jin scrolled down to another section. "It gets worse. Look at this part about the integration protocol." The integration protocol was a detailed plan for how to study a new species without them realizing it. Humans would be given limited technology and scattered across the galaxy in small groups. They would be assigned to work alongside Confederation species, but always in positions where they could be monitored and controlled. Every human posting in the galaxy is part of this, Tejo realized. We're not crew members or colonists, we're lab rats. But the most disturbing part came at the end of the document. Sojin had translated a section called Terminal Assessment Criteria. It listed the conditions under which a species would be deemed too dangerous to allow continued existence. The criteria included rapid technological advancement, unpredictable behavior patterns, high adaptability to hostile environments, and something called innovation beyond acceptable parameters. "We're checking every box," Hyunwoo said grimly. "Humans excel at all of these things." Tejo thought about all the human achievements he had heard about over the years. Human engineers solving problems that stumped alien experts. Human soldiers adapting to combat situations faster than anyone expected. Human scientists making breakthrough discoveries that advanced galactic knowledge. All of these accomplishments that had made him proud to be human were apparently evidence that his species was too dangerous to live. Over the next week, responses began coming in from other humans across the galaxy. Captain Minho confirmed that his mining operation had similar hidden devices monitoring everything they did. He had also noticed that human workers were often given the most dangerous assignments, as if someone was testing their limits. Intelligence analyst Dayun's message was more disturbing. She reported that Confederate Central Command had been receiving detailed reports about human activities for years. The reports came from a source that was listed in the files as Nexus Protocol. But when she tried to access information about this protocol, she found that her security clearance wasn't high enough. "But here's the interesting part," her message continued. "I did some digging through historical databases. The Nexus Protocol isn't new. It's been used on at least 12 other species over the past 1,000 years. Sojin worked frantically to translate more of the archived transmissions, looking for any mention of these other species. What she found was a pattern that made her sick to her stomach. Each species had gone through the same process. First contact, integration into Confederation society, a period of observation and testing, and then final assessment. Of the 12 species that had been subjected to the Nexus Protocol, only 3 had passed the final assessment. The other 9 had simply disappeared from galactic records. What happened to them? Taeho asked. Sojin showed him a transmission from several hundred years ago. It was a report about a species called the Kethmori, who had been particularly gifted at biotechnology. Their final assessment had concluded that their innovations posed a systemic threat to galactic stability. The solution had been swift and thorough. A coordinated system malfunction had affected all Kethmori colonies simultaneously. Equipment failures, life support breakdowns, and communication blackouts had killed the entire species within a matter of hours. The official Confederation records listed it as a tragic accident caused by incompatible technology. They made it look like an accident, Hyunwoo said. Just like they're planning to do with us. Taeho realized the scope of what they were facing. This wasn't just about humanity. The Galactic Confederation was built on genocide. Any species that showed too much potential was eliminated before they could become a threat to the established order. More messages came in from humans across the galaxy. Engineer Oh Dong-wook from the Border Worlds reported that his team had found kill switches built into every piece of human equipment. Pilot Han Ye-jin from the exploration fleet discovered that human ships had hidden override codes that could shut down all systems remotely. The picture that emerged was terrifying in its completeness. Every human in the galaxy was surrounded by technology that could kill them instantly if the Confederation decided they were too dangerous. But the most important message came from Dr. Lim Hae-won on Earth's moon base. As a cybersecurity expert, she had been investigating unusual patterns in the global communication network. Her findings confirmed their worst fears. The Nexus Protocol extends to Earth itself. Her message read, "Every major system on the planet has hidden subroutines that can be activated remotely. Power grids, water treatment, transportation networks, even medical equipment. If they decide to terminate humanity, they can kill everyone on Earth simultaneously." Taeho felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on him. 65 days remained until the final assessment, and now he knew that the fate of every human being depended on what happened in those remaining weeks. That night he called another secret meeting with Sojin and Hyunwoo. They gathered in a maintenance closet deep in the ship. The only place they were confident wasn't being monitored. "We need to contact everyone," Taeho said. "Every human in the galaxy needs to know what we're facing." "And then what?" Hyunwoo asked. "Even if we warn everyone, how do we fight something this big? They control all of our technology. They have ships and weapons we can't match. They've been planning this for decades." Sojin had been quiet throughout the meeting, studying data on her tablet. Finally, she looked up with a strange expression on her face. "I think I found something," she said. "Remember how I said the Nexus Protocol has been used on 12 other species? Well, I've been studying the transmission patterns, and I think I understand how it works." She pulled up a complex diagram showing quantum communication pathways across the galaxy. "The entire system depends on quantum entanglement," she explained. "All of the hidden devices, all of the kill switches, all of the monitoring equipment, it's all connected through a single quantum network. That's how they can coordinate simultaneous actions across thousands of light years instantly." Taeho studied the diagram. "What does that mean for us?" "It means the system has a weakness," Sojin said. "Quantum entanglement is incredibly powerful, but it's also fragile. If we could disrupt the network at specific points, the entire system would collapse." Hyunwoo leaned forward. "How many points?" Sojin highlighted 17 locations on the galactic map. "These are the primary quantum resonance nodes. They maintain the entanglement across the entire network. If we could somehow disrupt all 17 simultaneously, the Nexus Protocol would fail," Taeho finished. "But how could we possibly coordinate an attack on 17 targets across the galaxy?" "I don't know," Sojin admitted, "but it might be our only chance." As they sat in the darkness of the maintenance closet, surrounded by the humming machinery of a ship that was part of their prizo, the plan started with Admiral Song Woo-jin, the highest-ranking human in the Confederate Navy. Taeho had hesitated for days before sending him a coded message, knowing that if the Admiral was loyal to the Confederation, it would mean certain death for all of them. But they needed someone with real authority to make their impossible plan work. The Admiral's response came 3 days later, hidden in a routine fleet deployment order. To anyone else, it looked like standard military paperwork. But embedded in the technical specifications was a single line that made Taeho's heart race. Inspection protocols updated. All human personnel report equipment anomalies immediately. Woo Jin knew. Not only that, he was already working on the problem. Within a week, their small group of 3 had grown into a galaxy-wide resistance network. Dr. Lim Hae-won from Earth's moon base became their technical coordinator, using her cybersecurity expertise to create secure communication channels that bypassed Confederate monitoring. Specialist Bai Jun-seo, a Marine stationed on the border worlds, began recruiting other military personnel who had noticed strange things about their equipment. The network grew carefully. Each new member was vouched for by someone already in the group. They used coded messages hidden in routine communications, met in maintenance areas and supply closets, and shared information through data packets disguised as software updates. Hae-won made the first major breakthrough. Working from her secure lab on Luna, she had been analyzing the quantum entanglement patterns of the Nexus protocol. Her findings were both encouraging and terrifying. The good news is that Sojin was right, she reported during a secret video conference. The entire network depends on 17 primary nodes. If we can disrupt all of them simultaneously, the quantum decoherence will collapse the whole system. What's the bad news? Admiral Woo Jin asked from his flagship. The timing has to be perfect. We're talking about quantum-level precision here. If we're off by even a few microseconds, the system will detect the attack and adapt. We'll only get one chance. Taeho studied the list of target locations that Hae-won had identified. They were spread across the galaxy, on heavily fortified Confederate installations, deep space stations, and capital worlds. Some were located in systems that humans had never been allowed to visit. How do we even get to these places, he asked. That's when they learned about the hidden network that humans had been building, without even realizing it. Engineer Oh Dong-wook had been quietly sabotaging Confederate ships for over a year, making small modifications that looked like routine maintenance, but actually gave human crews secret advantages. Pilot Han Ye-jin had been leading informal training sessions, where human pilots shared techniques that weren't in any official manual. Dr. Yu Sung-min had been developing theoretical technologies that Confederate scientists said were impossible. We've been preparing for this without knowing it, Admiral Woo Jin realized during one of their planning sessions. Every time we've adapted, improvised, or found a better way to do something, we've been building the tools we need to fight back. The plan that emerged was complex beyond anything that had ever been attempted. 17 teams would need to infiltrate 17 of the most secure locations in the galaxy, all while maintaining their cover as loyal Confederate personnel. They would have exactly 47 minutes to reach their targets and disable the quantum nodes before the system detected the pattern of attacks. But as they refined their plans and gathered resources, they discovered they weren't the only ones watching. Researcher Nam Ji-ho had been part of their network from almost the beginning. He was a human scientist working on Confederate technology development, with access to advanced research facilities and classified databases. His contributions had been valuable, helping them understand how the Nexus Protocol's technology worked. It was Specialist Jun-seo who first became suspicious. During a supply run to the research station where Ji-ho worked, he noticed that security around the human quarters had been quietly increased. Guard rotations had changed, and new monitoring equipment had been installed in areas where humans gathered. Something's wrong, Jun-seo reported. They're watching us more closely than before. The truth came out during what should have been a routine planning meeting. Ji-ho had requested a face-to-face discussion with the team leaders, claiming he had critical information about one of their target sites. Taeho, Sojin, Hyunwoo, and Jun-seo met him in an abandoned section of the research station. I can't let you do this, Ji-ho said without any opening pleasantries. I've been thinking about what we're planning, and I've realized we're making a terrible mistake. Taeho felt ice in his stomach. What are you talking about? Look at human history, Ji-ho continued. We're violent, unpredictable, and destructive. Every time we've encountered something new, our first instinct has been to fight or conquer it. The Confederation is trying to create a peaceful galaxy, and we're a threat to that. Sojin stared at him in disbelief. They're planning to commit genocide against our entire species. To prevent something worse, Ji-ho replied. What do you think will happen if humans become the dominant species in the galaxy? We'll do to other races what we've done to each other throughout our history. War, slavery, extinction. The Confederation is trying to prevent that. Junseo's hand moved slowly toward his sidearm. You reported us, didn't you? Jiho nodded sadly. I sent a message to my supervisor 3 hours ago. Confederate security forces are already moving to arrest the key members of our network. It's over. The next few minutes were chaos. Junseo drew his weapon, but Jiho had expected that. He had brought a Confederate security device that sent out a neural disruption pulse, sending Junseo to his knees. Hyunwoo rushed forward, but Jiho was faster, stunning him with the same device. Taeho and Sojin found themselves facing their former friend across the small room, with their 2 companions unconscious on the floor. I'm sorry, Jiho said, and he sounded like he meant it. But this is for the best. For everyone. Sojin was the one who saved them. She had been carrying a portable data tablet loaded with technical specifications for the quantum nodes. Instead of using it as a shield or weapon, she activated an experimental program that Haewon had developed, a localized electromagnetic pulse generator. The pulse fried Jiho's security device and temporarily disrupted the station's communication systems. In the confusion that followed, Taeho and Sojin managed to revive their friends and escape through the maintenance tunnels. But the damage was done. Jiho's betrayal had exposed at least part of their network to Confederate authorities. Within hours, reports started coming in from across the galaxy. Human personnel were being arrested on charges of sedition and conspiracy. Research facilities were being locked down. Communication channels were being monitored more closely than ever. Admiral Wu Jin's message was grim. We've lost at least 30% of our people. They know we're planning something, but they don't know what or when. We have maybe 24 hours before they figure out the rest. The timeline for their mission had just collapsed from weeks to hours. Haewon made the decision that saved everything. Instead of trying to rebuild their compromised network, she activated a backup plan that none of them had known existed. For months, she had been embedding hidden subroutines in routine software updates sent to human personnel across the galaxy. The subroutines were dormant, waiting for a specific activation signal. I can trigger the mission remotely, she announced during an emergency conference call. Every human in our network will receive coordinates and instructions simultaneously. They'll have to act on incomplete information, but it's better than no mission at all. There was no time for careful planning or detailed briefings, no time to ensure that every team knew exactly what they were doing, no time to coordinate timing or backup plans. Taeho looked around at his team aboard the Eternal Harmony. Hyunwoo was preparing the technical equipment they would need to access the ship's quantum node. Sojin was memorizing the layout of the restricted sections where the node was located. They had gone from months of preparation to a desperate improvisation in a matter of hours. Are we really going to do this? Hyunwoo asked. Taeho thought about Jiho's words. Maybe humans were violent and unpredictable. Maybe they were a threat to galactic stability. But they were also adaptable, creative, and capable of incredible cooperation when facing impossible odds. The very traits that made the Confederation fear them were the traits that might save them. Yes, he said. We're going to cut the strings that bind us all. Haewon's activation signal went out at 1400 hours Galactic Standard Time. Across 17 star systems, human personnel received the same message: coordinates, target specifications, and a simple instruction. Operation Freedom begins now. Good luck. The first successful strike came from Captain Minho's team at the mining colony. They had been expecting something like this ever since Taeho's first coded message, and they were ready. Minho's engineers had already mapped the location of their quantum node and prepared the tools they would need to disable it. The second success was in. Taeho felt so. The emergency alarms on Confederate Central Command had been screaming for 6 hours straight. Supreme Chancellor Vexithera stood before the massive holographic display that showed the galaxy-wide communication network, watching as connection after connection went dark. Red warning indicators spread across the map like a plague. 17 primary nodes are offline, reported the duty officer. A tall, pale creature with 4 arms that moved frantically across multiple control panels. The quantum entanglement matrix is collapsing faster than our repair teams can compensate. Vexithara had ruled the Galactic Confederation for over 300 years. She had overseen the evaluation and elimination of 9 species that had posed threats to galactic stability. She had never seen anything like this. How is this possible? She demanded. The Nexus protocol was designed to be unbreakable. Unknown, Chancellor. The attacks were precisely coordinated across 17 star systems simultaneously. The level of technical knowledge required suggests... Suggests what? The duty officer hesitated. It suggests that the humans understood our technology better than we thought possible. Meanwhile, aboard the Eternal Harmony, Tejo and his team were discovering what happened when you destroyed a surveillance system that had been watching humanity for 30 years. The Confederate security forces who had arrested them seemed confused and unsure of their orders. Without constant guidance from Central Command, the aliens who had been controlling human activities for decades were suddenly lost. "Sir," one of the guards said to his commander, "we're not receiving any response from headquarters. What should we do with the prisoners?" The commander, a reptilian creature with scales that changed color when he was stressed, looked at the humans with something approaching fear. "Lock them in Detention Bay 7. Don't let them near any technology." But technology was everywhere on a starship, and humans had always been good at improvising. Within an hour of being locked up, Hyunwoo had figured out how to override the detention bay's environmental controls using a piece of wire from his uniform and a component from the cell's lighting system. "The Confederation always underestimated human creativity," he said as the cell door slid open. "They spent so much time studying our psychology that they forgot to study our engineering." Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out as the collapse of the Nexus protocol created chaos in Confederate installations. Human personnel who had been under constant surveillance suddenly found themselves free to act without oversight. Some used this freedom to sabotage the facilities where they worked. Others gathered weapons and prepared to defend themselves. Many simply tried to get messages to Earth to warn their home planet of what was coming. Because everyone knew that the Confederation would not simply accept the destruction of their control system. They would retaliate, and they would start with humanity's homeworld. On Earth, General Kang Soo-jin received the first warning when Dr. Lim Hae-won's emergency broadcast reached the moon base. The message was simple and terrifying. Nexus protocol compromised. Confederate retaliation imminent. Activate all defensive measures. Soo-jin had been preparing for this possibility for 15 years, ever since she had first noticed anomalies in the technology that the Confederation had provided to Earth. Working in secret with a small group of human scientists and military officers, she had developed defensive systems that supposedly didn't exist.
"Signal all hidden installations," she ordered.
Operation Homestand is now active. The truth was that Earth had never been as defenseless as the Confederation believed. While Confederate observers watched humanity's official military and technology programs, human engineers had been building a second, secret infrastructure. Hidden factories produced weapons using principles that Confederate science claimed were impossible. Underground bunkers housed defensive systems that could protect major population centers. Secret research facilities had been developing technologies that Earth's official scientific community had never heard of. It was humanity's greatest kept secret. They had been preparing for war since the day they met the Confederation. The first Confederate fleets appeared at the edge of the solar system, 12 hours after the Nexus protocol collapsed. Supreme Chancellor Vexithera herself led the assault force aboard her personal dreadnought, the Eternal Judgment. She had come to personally oversee the elimination of the species that had dared to challenge galactic order. "This ends today," she announced to her fleet commanders. "Humanity has proven that they cannot be controlled or contained. They are too dangerous to be allowed to exist." But as her ships moved toward Earth, they encountered something the Confederation had never seen before. Human defensive technology that actually worked. The first surprise came when Confederate ships tried to use their standard disabling weapons against human vessels. These weapons were designed to shut down enemy systems by interfacing with their technology and causing critical failures. They had worked perfectly against every species the Confederation had ever fought. They did nothing to human ships. "Their systems are completely incompatible with our disabling protocols," reported the fleet's technical officer. "It's as if they designed their technology specifically to resist our weapons." "That's exactly what we did," said engineer Oh Dong-wook, broadcasting on an open channel from his modified fighter craft. He had been sabotaging Confederate ships for over a year, and now he was leading a squadron of human pilots who had been preparing for this moment. "We've been studying your technology for 30 years. We know exactly how it works, and we know exactly how to beat it." The space battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Confederate ships had overwhelming advantages in size, firepower, and numbers. But human ships moved in ways that defied traditional space combat doctrine. They used gravitational assists from asteroids to change direction impossibly quickly. They hid in the magnetic fields of gas giants to avoid detection. They coordinated their attacks using communication methods that Confederate ships couldn't intercept or jam. How are they doing this? Vexthara demanded as her massive dreadnought was harassed by fighters that seemed to appear from nowhere and disappear just as quickly. The answer came from pilot Han Ye-jin, whose voice cut through Confederate communication channels with crystal clarity. We're human. We adapt. But the real shock came when the Confederate fleet tried to implement their final solution, the simultaneous activation of kill switches in all human technology. This was supposed to be foolproof. Every piece of equipment that humans used, from their ships to their life support systems, contained hidden subroutines that could be triggered remotely. The plan was to shut down all human technology at once, leaving them helpless in the vacuum of space. The kill switches activated perfectly, and nothing happened. Impossible, whispered the Chancellor's technical advisor. Every human device in the solar system should have failed simultaneously. On Earth's moon base, Dr. Lim Hae-won smiled as she watched Confederate ships try desperately to understand why their ultimate weapon had failed. We figured out your kill switches 2 years ago, she said to her team. Every piece of human technology has been secretly modified to ignore remote shutdown commands. The modification had been elegant in its simplicity. Human engineers had discovered that the Confederate kill switches worked by sending a specific quantum signature that caused technological systems to shut down. So they had modified all human technology to recognize that signature and do the opposite, activating backup systems and enhanced performance modes. Instead of shutting down, human ships and installations across the solar system suddenly became faster, stronger, and more powerful. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. As Confederate forces pressed their attack on Earth itself, they encountered defensive systems that shouldn't have existed. Orbital platforms that had been disguised as communication satellites revealed themselves to be powerful weapon systems. Underground installations launched fighter craft that used propulsion technology the Confederation had never seen before. Even Earth's space elevators turned out to be giant railguns, capable of launching projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Where did all of this come from? Vexthara demanded. The answer came from General Su-jin, broadcasting from Earth's military command center. We've had 30 years to prepare, and we've been learning from the best teachers in the galaxy. Every piece of technology you gave us, every system you showed us, every gift you provided, we reverse-engineered all of it and made it better. The truth was staggering in its implications. Humanity had not been passive subjects in their evaluation. They had been active students learning everything they could about galactic technology, while pretending to be grateful recipients of Confederate generosity. Every exchange program, every technology transfer, every educational opportunity had been a chance for humans to study their potential enemies. And humans, it turned out, were very good students. As the battle raged around Earth, reports started coming in from across the galaxy. Human resistance groups were launching coordinated attacks on Confederate installations. Ships that had been crewed by humans for years were being seized by their human personnel. Colonies that had seemed peaceful and compliant were revealing hidden weapons. The galaxy's plans for Earth collapsed when humans cut off the line part. The battle for Earth's solar system had been raging for 18 hours when Supreme Chancellor Vexthara made the decision that would change the galaxy forever. Her massive dreadnought, the Eternal Judgment, was damaged and listing to one side. Half of her fleet was either destroyed or disabled by human forces that fought like nothing she had ever encountered. Prepare the extinction. Protocol, she ordered her remaining commanders. The extinction. Protocol was the Confederation's ultimate weapon, a device that could destabilize a star and cause it to go supernova. It had only been used twice in galactic history, both times to eliminate species that had refused to accept Confederate authority. The destruction of humanity's sun would not only kill every human in the solar system, but would serve as a warning to any other species that might consider rebellion. But, as her technicians prepared to activate the weapon, Vexthara received a message that stopped her cold. Chancellor, came a voice over the communication system. It was Commander Lee Tae-ho, broadcasting from the captured Confederate vessel Eternal Harmony. "We need to talk." Tae-ho had escaped from detention when the ship's confused crew lost contact with Central Command. Working with So-jin and Hyun-woo, he had managed to take control of the ship's communication systems. More importantly, So-jin had been using her access to the ship's databases to uncover secrets that the Confederation had hidden for thousands of years. "You have 30 seconds before I destroy your entire star system," Vexithara replied. "Then you'll want to hear this quickly," Tae-ho said. "We know about the others." There was silence on the communication channel. Then, in a voice that sounded very different from her previous commanding tone, Vexithara asked, "What others?" So-jin stepped forward to the communication console. Her voice was calm and clear as she spoke the words that would reshape galactic civilization. "The Keth Mori, the Veltar, the Zindari, the Plex Confederation, all the species that supposedly died in accidents or natural disasters. We know you murdered them." Over the past 18 hours, while the battle raged around Earth, So-jin had been working frantically to translate the deepest archives in the Confederate database. What she found was a complete record of the Confederation's true history, a 1,000-year chronicle of systematic genocide disguised as galactic peacekeeping. "We found your real records," she continued. "Every species that showed signs of becoming too powerful, too innovative, or too independent was eliminated. You've been running a galactic protection racket, destroying anyone who might threaten your control." The communication channel was silent for a long moment. When Vexithara spoke again, her voice was tired and old. "You understand nothing about galactic stability. We maintain order. We prevent chaos. You prevent progress," Tae-ho replied. "You've turned the galaxy into a prison where no one is allowed to grow or advance beyond the limits you set." But the real revelation came when So-jin shared what she had discovered about the Confederation's founding species themselves. The truth was hidden in the oldest archives, encrypted in languages that hadn't been spoken for millennia. The original founders of the Confederation weren't the wise peacekeepers you pretend to be, So-jin said. They were survivors. Survivors of a species that was almost eliminated by an even older galactic empire. They created the Nexus Protocol because they were terrified of becoming victims again. The historical records told a story that the modern Confederation had forgotten or chosen to ignore. Thousands of years ago, the galaxy had been ruled by a species called the First Empire. When that empire finally fell, the survivors had sworn that they would never again allow any single species to become powerful enough to dominate others. The Confederation was built on fear. Fear of being controlled, fear of being eliminated, fear of losing the power they had gained. "You became the very thing you were afraid of," Tae-ho said. "You turned into the oppressors to prevent anyone else from oppressing you." As this conversation played out on open communication channels, it was being heard across the galaxy. Every Confederate ship, every installation, every colony was receiving the transmission. For the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy was learning the truth about their government. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. On worlds across the galaxy, species that had lived under Confederate oversight for generations began to question everything they had been told. The surveillance systems that had been monitoring them, the technology restrictions that had limited their development, the protective military forces that had prevented conflicts. All of it was revealed to be tools of control rather than assistance. But the most dramatic change came from within the Confederation itself. Many of the alien species that served in Confederate forces had genuinely believed they were working for peace and stability. Learning that they had been unknowingly participating in genocide created a crisis of conscience that split the Confederation's military and government. On the bridge of the Eternal Judgment, Vexthara watched her empire crumble in real time. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Entire fleets declaring independence, colonies refusing to obey Confederate orders, government officials resigning in protest. The revelation of the Confederation's true nature was destroying the organization from within. "You've doomed the galaxy to chaos," she said to Tae-ho. "Without the Confederation's guidance, species will go to war with each other. There will be violence, conflict, suffering." "Maybe," Tae-ho replied, "but there will also be freedom. And freedom includes the right to make mistakes. That's when Admiral Song Woo-jin made the announcement that defined humanity's choice for the future. Broadcasting from Earth's orbital command center, his words reached every corner of the galaxy. To all species listening to this transmission, humanity offers alliance, not domination. We share the technology that freed us from surveillance. We offer friendship to those who want it, and we will defend those who cannot defend themselves. But we will not rule over anyone. The galaxy belongs to all who call it home. The offer was unprecedented in galactic history. Every previous liberation had resulted in the liberators becoming the new rulers. Species that gained power typically used it to control others. But humanity was offering something different. True freedom, with no strings attached. The response was immediate. Within hours, delegations from dozens of species were requesting meetings with human representatives. Some wanted the technology to detect and disable surveillance systems. Others wanted military assistance in defending themselves from Confederate loyalists. Many simply wanted to establish diplomatic relations with a species that had proven it was possible to break free from galactic oppression. But there were also those who rejected humanity's offer. Some species had been loyal to the Confederation for so long that they couldn't imagine any other way of life. Others feared that removing Confederate oversight would lead to chaos and conflict. A few believed that humanity was simply trying to replace the Confederation as galactic rulers. This led to the Great Division that would define the galaxy for generations to come. Some worlds embraced the new freedom and began developing their own technologies and societies without outside interference. Others remained loyal to the Confederation or formed new alliances based on mutual defense and cooperation. Still others chose isolation, preferring to limit contact with other species entirely. Supreme Chancellor Vexthera found herself facing a choice that she had never expected to make. Her fleet was defeated, her government was collapsing, and her authority was gone. But she still had the Extinction Protocol weapon, and she could still destroy Earth's sun as an act of final revenge. Why? She asked Taiho during their final conversation. Why risk everything to help strangers? What do you gain from freeing species you've never met? Taiho thought about the question for a moment before answering. Because that's what makes us human. We help others not because we gain something from it, but because it's the right thing to do. You spent 30 years studying us, trying to understand what made us dangerous. You missed the most important thing about humanity, which is, we care about people we've never met. We fight for principles we'll never personally benefit from. We choose to do good even when it costs us everything. That's not dangerous. That's hope. In the end, Vexthera chose not to activate the Extinction Protocol. Perhaps it was Taiho's words that convinced her, or perhaps it was the realization that destroying Earth would only prove that humanity had been right about the Confederation's true nature. She ordered her remaining forces to withdraw, and she disappeared into the outer reaches of the galaxy. The Confederation as a galactic government ceased to exist within 6 months. Some of its former territories became independent worlds. Others formed new alliances based on shared values rather than imposed authority. The Nexus Protocol surveillance network was dismantled, with its technology shared freely among species that wanted to ensure they would never be watched without their knowledge again. Humanity kept its promise. They shared their technology freely, offered military assistance to anyone who asked for it, and refused every invitation to become the galaxy's new rulers. Human ships B,